My name is Shengtian. I'm the managing editor of Yishu. Yishu is an English journal, start from 2002, concentrate in contemporary Chinese art. So we cover the artists from mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and also the Chinese art living in Europe and other places outside of China. I'm very glad to be invited to organize this panel today to analyze the contemporary Chinese art scene. I'm very happy to bring 3 speakers today. And because time is very short, so I will start right away. I will introduce each speaker, and they will give you a maybe 7-8 minute talk. Then after that, if we still have time, we will let us ask some questions. The first speaker is Lu Jie. We have known each other for more than 30 years. We were from the same China Academy of Arts in Hangzhou, where Lu Jie studied brush painting with the Chinese masters. But now Lu Jie is a world-famous curator and organizer. And he's a director of and the chief curator of the Long March Project, a widely acclaimed ongoing art project working to link Chinese and the international artists across the border, region, and the geography. It has been exhibited in several locations, including the 5th Shanghai Biennale, that was one of the curators, the 27th Sao Paulo Biennale, the Asian Pacific Triennial, Brisbane, and the Asia Society Museum in New York, 2008. He has curated numerous exhibitions in Asia, Europe, and North America. He's a senior research fellow in the program of the curatorial research at Dartington College of Art, UK, and was a guest lecturer at California College of Art. I think 2008 was not only very important historical moment for China, because China had the earthquake, Olympic, and also experienced the financial tsunami. It's not only for the country, but also it's very important moment for art, Chinese art. Because Chinese art in 2008, it reached the peak of this kind of a explosion of a market economy. But then after that, it slowed down, or as some people describe, like totally falling down. So now we will start this because Lu Jie has been running this Long March project in Beijing for many, many years. So can you tell us what's going on, what happened?
Well, thank you for inviting me being here to share my knowledge and experience. I think it's a very interesting moment right now in China, especially after Olympic until today. I would expect this would happen sooner or later, but it happened much faster than I imagined. It's connecting with the financial crisis, but I think it's a turning point for all of us, artists, curators, organizers, mediators, to think of which direction and approach for contemporary Chinese art next, because we have ourselves, throughout the last 10 years, been thinking and debating a lot about issues such as production, creation, model and scale, and consumption, interpretation. All these issues we all suffer and struggle with globally, such as curatorial questions, such as Biennale as model, such as the auctions, the market, museum collections. All these issues are all suddenly gathered together, hit China, that everything has been moving so fast the last 15, 20 years. And especially because it has been moving so fast that people, including us, including myself, we just don't have time to really sit down and think and slow down. So right now, honestly, at least for me, I do have an excuse to say, okay, I fail here, I make mistake there, so can we try to rethink what we went through in order to make the next stage more meaningful? So one thing I want to point out is that at least for curators or artists, or also strongly we can feel from the market that the conversation, the focus, the love or hate of Chinese contemporary art has shift from the original kind of focus on so-called post-89, so-called the 1980s avant-garde movement, and ended up with mostly oil paintings with a certain style or Chinese signature, to new media, to site-specific, time-based, all kind of more innovative medium or idea, and open up to different generations. So we see the market is still quite strong for those very celebrated popular artists who came out from mid-80s, and their market is still quite stable and strong, which is again confirm the historical meaning of the Chinese contemporary art the last 20 years. But we are seeing the new generation artists are aggressively moving ahead, and it's opportunity for us that to shift people's focus or interest to be much more open, because when the market was very hot, everybody was talking about another market record, another something like that to celebrate instead of questioning. Then the inquiry, the interest was rather less than what the curators or the local collectors can try to communicate with the international. We see this separation, this gap between the so-called local and international was still there today, but I think the environment much improves. It's opened up, and it's very interesting moment for us to work with. And I'm also very curious, important collector like my friend Sylvain here, what do you think about it? Because I will just quickly go over a general, my feeling, but want to know what is from collector's point of view, your experience or idea. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, let me introduce Sylvain first. Sylvain Levy and his wife Dominique, they're the founder of DSL collection. They began collecting Chinese contemporary art after a long time collecting art and the most precisely designed from all around the world. The DSL collection is a private collection representing 90 of the leading Chinese avant-garde artists who have had a major influence on the development of contemporary art in China today. A part of the collection also they launched a website as a virtual museum to introduce the 150 artworks ranging from painting, sculpture, installation to video and photography online. Mr. Levy is an honorary member of Shanghai University's faculty, and he travels a lot to China. We had the chance to on a panel early last year in Beijing in Tsinghua University. I found he, as a collector, his view on Chinese art is very interesting. Compared to at that time, many dealers and many auctioneer, talking about it. But you have a very fresh view on Chinese art. So that's why I invite you. I'd like you to answer what Luigi asked. As a collector, what do you see? Now, is it a good situation for Chinese art, or there's some like a worse situation? What's your feeling?
Thank you very much for introducing me and for inviting me. First, it's very fresh because it's very new, since we began the collection 4 years ago. So my experience is at least in terms of time, is very short. But in terms of experience, is very strong, since we are dedicating a lot of passion to this kind of project. What I would say first, and it's very difficult to sum up Chinese contemporary art in 30 minutes, and I think it's so we'll just have some ideas. First, I don't think that we speak of Chinese contemporary art, that all the contemporary art in the world have been touched by the crisis. And all the contemporary art in the world had the same, let us say, experience with what we call bling, 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 bling art or whatever. So Chinese is not different from the others. And art was the same everywhere in the world, in the United States, in France, in China, whatever. This is the first point. The second point, which is very important for me, is that I think that the concept of Chinese contemporary art is very reductive. When you speak of Jeff Koons, you speak of an artist. And you don't speak of an American artist. When you speak of Damien Hirst, you speak of Damien Hirst. When you speak of Chinese contemporary art, you forget that behind this concept, there are a lot of artists, and very good artists who have their own way of doing, their own way of thinking, their own path, their own destiny. And so to always try to discuss of Chinese contemporary art is for me something a little bit strange. The other thing which is very important in terms of art, I think you have three types of art. You have art, cultural art, and just to tell you an example, when you go and you see that, for instance, at Sachi, you had more than 500 people coming for the exhibition. So you have people interested in art. You have business art, which is the business which is around the art, galleries, whatever, which is touched by the crisis, but it's still a business. And you have the art market, which is also a very small part of the market, which is the market which is linked with the auctions, and which concern only a few persons. So when we speak also of the market, I think we should also, or the culture, Chinese contemporary art, we should also be very careful on what we are saying. As a collector, what I can tell you is we've been collecting with my wife for 25 years, and we discovered by chance China 5 years ago. And as I used to say, I think art is the mirror for society. And what's happening today in China is so incredible in terms of human scale, because the country is big, because the speed is big, because whatever. And also you are also in a country which has 5,000 years of culture. So when you see all that, you think that in such a place, you can find some artists which are good, and not just artists which are the one we sell, we usually see at the auction. So what I want to say is that even if there is a crisis, they will still have artists who will keep on with their own way. And the own way, one artist told me, you know, for an artist, it's always a balance between honesty and success. And it's very difficult for an artist to find a good balance. So some artists prefer success, some artists prefer money, and the other prefer another kind of medium way. And you have this in China. But after I can tell you what are for me the problems of Chinese contemporary art. But to sum up a little bit what I want to say is that what's happening in China is absolutely incredible in terms of creation, I can tell you, absolutely incredible. And I'm really very amazed when I come here, for instance, in Basel, when you see that out of 2,500 artists represented here, you have only 30,000 Chinese artists. And when you know what is China, you see that what we have as an image of the Chinese art here in the Western country is not at all what's happening today in terms of what is really China in terms of creation. This is my first feeling.
Thank you. The third speaker is Chaos Yang, Chen Yang. Actually, we worked together almost 10 years ago. 2000, we brought a group of curators to China for the first time, including Okui and Weiser, Lin Cook, Sarat Maharat, a very good the curator from Western countries. During that trip, Chaos was my assistant and the translator. She did a great job. Now Chaos is a curatorial, is a curator, independent curator based in Berlin and Beijing. And she is the co-founder of Kultur in Berlin, a new art center to encourage the dialogue and the collaboration between China and Germany and Europe in the field of art and design, architecture, and filmmaking. Before this, she was the head of the curatorial department at the Millennium Art Museum and the Chaos Project in Beijing. Her latest curatorial project includes driving the skyline and picture from the surface of the Earth, body temperature, and many others. And she also involved in many international competition and award selection. She holds a master's degree in art history and theory from the Nanjing Academy of Art. So now, since she just come from Beijing last night, this morning, just arrived this morning. So she will give us the most update information from the Center of Chinese Art, Beijing. Please.
Thanks, Lao Zheng. Thanks for the invitation from Lao Zheng and also from Art Basel. Let me first start by showing a video clip which was really freshly made by the two artist group called Sylvain and Peng Yu, who just opened to the public about 2 weeks ago, and very fresh video clip.
An incredible one. I've seen it. Incredible.
This work is called Freedom and kind of a liberty. So this, we can have many ways to interpret their works, but that might take another whole panel. But I would like to quote what they actually tried to say from this work. It's the freedom that I think, and together with many, joined by many other colleagues from the same working field. And we actually somehow believe currently both Chinese artists and ecology and the whole environment, and perhaps we can also assume artists outside of China, it's currently with the turbulence from the end of the last year into the first couple of months of this year, and reaching a new field that we might get a different level of liberty and freedom. And this artist is an interesting example because their earliest work, which was considered to be the most controversial in China, who started to use the live animals and human bodies to make their work, which you can immediately recall some of the samples from young British artists. But then after so many years, and then slowly, then they actually immediately get this liberation and from the recent work, and this is the Chinese artists that you can see, you don't need to have any reference to understand their work, but rather it's reached this simplicity and drop all these contexts that you have to rely on and to understand their work. So for this way, we can actually have a very fresh perspective to understand Chinese art and Chinese society from their work. And this is also a very quick example. Chinese artists for the past 3-5 years, and I believe it's one of the group of artists achieve also the liberty to realize their ideas, because we're actually talking about the Chinese art, but I would like to take it back to say the art from China. So what kind of ecology offers the liberty to artists currently to realize the ideas like this one? And I would believe they might take many years to figure out proposals and find public funding to make the artists realize that they really want to realize in Europe. But in Beijing, if you have the idea, and you may, literally speaking, talk to a couple of friends, and with the support, partial support from galleries, you can realize immediately. And so if you pay attention to the art creation, art projects in Beijing and in China at large, this liberty to turn idea to really realize the work, now currently becomes so direct. And so this is, I would say, this is a very, very good path for the Chinese art scene. And because of this, and there are also many non-Chinese artists from Europe and North America and from Australia, and start from very short trip, and then later on start to really move to Beijing to work there and to enjoy this kind of liberty and try to turn their ideas being realized. So for this example, I would say, when we, in the very near future, look at the art from China, we can also, kind of compare it to New York or London. And we're not talking about Chinese-born artists or Chinese as a nationality groups, but rather the liberty that we might have even now from now, even growing more. And then it's an incubator space for artists and artist idea. And in this way, I would say we will have this, the earlier when Sylvain and Lu Jie also mentioned that this Chinese artists as a group almost put into the crate, and this is one label. Now, with this liberty, and I would say this label will be slowly flow away. We will just help us to see the individual. And then there's also some other change, I would say, because of this turbulence starting tsunami, economic tsunami, to quote Ms. Zheng. And then artists start acquire another very important element to sustain this liberty, which is time. Because before this tsunami, they were incredibly, almost a slavery, short of time to develop the career and develop their idea in the mature way. So constantly respond to commission projects and respond to museum assignments. And this responding way of work, really we see a whole bunch of Chinese artworks. Somehow we see they're so direct to respond to a current discussion on newspapers circulated with all this discussion. And then, but art actually sometimes really need to stay still a little, remote, give you fresh idea and perspective. So in this way, I'm also quite happy to join Mr. Zheng's panel, who runs this magazine called Yishu, which I also wanted to emphasize here, because now this panel, it's of English, it's in English, but it's really in a country, German-speaking country, or French. And then Yishu is actually the Chinese pronunciation for art, and in German-speaking countries, it's pronounced as Kunst. So I would emphasize, when we look at Chinese art, we might also want to know how we call art, which is Yishu. And when we call Yishu, there are a lots of things, backdrop, knowledges, and understanding and feeling, emotions are very different from what you understand about art or when you talk about Kunst. And then, it's interesting if you read news in China. The news in China about the economic field is, not any more optimistic than when you open newspaper or magazines here in Europe. But we all know things actually really happening, even counterpart this influence. For instance, in the current my work location, which is Berlin, once the tsunami, financial tsunami is there, then the public sector really engaged more. So as a comparison, actually in China, it's also the same. And once the private sector, when the banking or these things can hardly avoid being influenced from this global influence, which actually some of the group of people still feel quite optimistic because they thought we might avoid this one as we could avoid the one in 1997 when Korea and Hong Kong, couldn't avoid at all. But this time, after a decade, China is also part of it, so cannot really avoid it. But then, what is interesting indeed, China, there are lots of changes hidden. You haven't got, you can hardly see the consequences because it will take longer time to see the consequences. But we actually really have to emphasize the change of the structure of where the artists are working. For instance, the public sector involved much more actively than before. And we will now have, I've been spending more than 10 years working with public museums. So I know the situation earlier in public museum, it's very difficult to offer space to contemporary art. But now we have both public museums dedicate their time and space and funding to very young artists. At the very same time, private funded private museums and also becomes to be extremely active supporting the production of artists. And besides this, there are also new policies, for instance, the tax return for charity donation and also for cultural activities. And of course, with this creative sector, some of the new policies encourage the public bank, for instance, Bank of China, which is a state-owned bank, to involve in balance how to turn the possible mobility to support art, design, creative ideas. So in this way, I would say, in the very near future, we might see even more liberty for idea production in China.
Sorry, allow me to interrupt. Our time is almost out, but today even there's a very short talk by our speakers, but we know that the curator are still working, the collector is still waiting to buy, the artists are still creating. So it's a kind of a optimistic view from our speakers. I would like to give a few minutes to our audience. You have any question about this, their conclusion, or we can answer the speaker. Any information you want to know, because they all spend most of the time in Beijing. So maybe a few minutes. Anyone?
Just I want about this work of that you've seen there. I want to tell you two things. The idea, the concept behind, it was like a pipe. It was the pipe used in Tiananmen Square, and it was an 8-meter high pipe. So this is the first thing when you speak of freedom. And the other thing that I give you another figure, which is very interesting in China. In China, you have 300 million people connected to internet. 70 million people have a personal blog. 70 million people. Just to give you an idea of what's happening in China when you see the surface and what's happening down. So it means that you have already in China, even in the artistic way, even in the student, even in the personal way, You have a lot of things happening there, very, very strong things happening there. And you see the result in this kind of work that only Chinese people are able to do in terms of building the work and also are doing today. This is the Chinese contemporary art, what they're going to do, what they're doing today.
And I would also follow up Sylvain's comment on this one. But interesting indeed, I actually interpret this one as the Global Age 1989. Not only China, it's rather a global thing. But interesting indeed, when Sylvain said this is actually high-pressure water pipe used in Tiananmen Square, which was actually not the case. Because interesting indeed, I did some research afterwards. One of the reasons of the nightmare is really China didn't really have the high-pressure water pipe at that time. So apart from the police on the street, the only choice is soldier. So this is interesting comment, interesting point. But then I would actually really interpret their work in a much wider arena, which is not any issue associated with Chinese history, which is really need to rethink and re-investigate for many years. Which I actually quote one of the very recent, very important research done by Timothy Garton Ash, who's the professor from Oxford, and has done very interesting research about this global 89, East Europe and China. And we have to really think about, interestingly, the difference between our assumption and misunderstanding China. And now we see China is actually a country which is actually still works. We all assume it doesn't work at all, but then actually, interestingly, indeed, it works.
Just a word, and we're not going. What I said was said to me by Zheng from Tang.
Yeah.
So that's it.
All right. Yeah. I think if there's no questions, I just want to say a few words. We all know contemporary Chinese art scene in China is relatively young. As Sylvain analyzed, he said this is the first time Chinese art experienced this kind of economic crisis. You know, for Western artists or Western art community, you had long term experience of up and down. But for Chinese artists, this is the first time, because I remember only start from 2006, like in the first auction in New York, they started the prices are going, up, and then in last 2 years we saw this economic the market booming. So after 2 years, the whole world facing this economic downturn, and Chinese artists, dealers, and the many people in the art community, the first time has to deal with this kind of a problem. So it may be a chance for Chinese artists to learn, and also for us to re-evaluate, re-accept Chinese art. And I think it's a challenge, but it's a good opportunity for Chinese art. I talk to many people in China and outside of China. We all have hope that this, in Chinese, we say, 的坏事变成好事. It means a bad thing will turn to good thing. And we hope this will provide a good opportunity for Chinese artists to concentrate their work, to improve their work, and then they will learn more about what the market can do for them. Not only spoil them, but also sometimes, they have to know that to how to keep their independence and their creative power to make good art. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
One question.
There's one question.
Oh.
My question was, what do you think is the most important things for the Western gallery with the Western artists to know once they are entering Chinese art market? What do you think the most important things you would say to them?
Lu Jie, maybe.
To enter.
Western.
Can you hear me? No? Lost voice? Can you hear me? Yeah, interesting question, but when we were just talking, I was keep thinking, if the turmoil arrive a little later, maybe Chinese will be able to start to deal with what I call the art deficit. What I mean is the gallery has been experienced a long time kind of trouble going to China, hoping that's the new territory, try to do something, but especially in the art fair, very difficult to sell. So there is this problem of how international is Chinese art. If you only thinking about the Biennale, the exhibitions, the Chinese art, the global presence has been quite high, but when you think about collecting, it's more like one direction. It's international, now join with the local to collect Chinese. But for Chinese to buy international still is very, very, very early beginning. But very interestingly, when this economic crisis happened, we not only see Asian and local Chinese collectors open up to buy Korean, Japanese, and international. Not only that, they open up to buy works, not only oil painting, expensive one, famous one, but also new media, conceptual work, that at the meantime, when you open up to that medium and idea, then you open up to the global art. So we see that there are more collectors interested in buying the international, which is a very good sign, and it's very good. It's happening after the crisis happened. Regarding the international gallery artists going to China, there are all different agendas. I mean, maybe for some people it's important to do a show in Tibet, or some people it's important to engage with National Museum or Shanghai Biennale. But there are galleries such as our colleague Gary Continua. They've been doing fantastic work. Many international important artists' work they're showing in China. It's difficult to find collector, but they've been keep doing this for years, still doing it, and it's becoming part of the local scene.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
As a Western, I think it's interesting. First, I think that there is a barrier for a Western person, the language. This is the first barrier. Many names you cannot even pronounce them. So this is the first barrier. The second barrier is the cultural barrier. So it means that if you really want to enter into China, you have to enter physically into China. You have to do a lot of homework, and you have to become, let us be, accustomed with all this China. This is really, it needs from yourself a big part of involvement, personal involvement. But if I can give you just my opinion, since you are speaking of gallery, whatever, of market, what is important is not the state of the market, What is always important is the potential, It's not important the price today, whatever. What is important is what will happen in the future. But I can tell you, from my side, from just my side, the potential in Asia and the potential in China for a certain number of reasons, which are economic reasons, because you will have people collecting in China, you will have museums collecting in China, because a certain number of things, because the Chinese art scene is becoming very, very, very active. The potential is really part of the potential of the contemporary art is in China, or China, Taiwan, China, and also Korea, whatever. But if you really want to do that, you have to really make a lot of personal effort. But I think at the end, people who will enter into the Chinese art scene in one way or another, just you can also be interested by culture. I think in the end and in the very near future, very, very near, because what will happen with this crisis is this China will go up much quicker because the other are going down much quicker. So the balance between the Asia and the Western world is getting much quicker the same. So what's going to happen very quickly is that if you don't take any position, I don't know if you're a gallery, if you take any position today, tomorrow it will be a little bit more difficult. And as for a collector, I think for us, for me, it's the best time, No more waiting list, no more studio closed, no more, no more unrealistic prices. So what's the crisis?
That's good. Thank you. Thank you again. Just a reminder, Yishu has a booth at the magazine section L27. Please visit us. Also, we publish an art guide for Basel. There are some text review on Chinese art, on the 2008 Chinese art, and also some view about the crisis. So if you are interested, you can pick up a copy. Thank you again.
This is the best way to learn China also.